In this video, I'm going to show you how I managed to go from this level to this level, at least when it comes to learning to draw dragons. Getting from a level like this to this took me approximately 60 days, so about 2 months. And I'm going to walk through how I did it. So in case you're wondering, yes, this is my actual progress. I actually made this progress in 60 days using the method I'm about to describe. And remember, if it worked for me, then it's going to work for you too. So let's get down to it. First thing I did was I made a list of all the things I need to study to learn to draw a dragon. The first thing you need is to figure out the basic forms of the dragon and study it properly. Basically, I need to study the dragon's body in different poses. I needed to study the legs and the feet. And I wanted to study the head also specifically. A third thing which I might have added is the wings. In addition to studying the basic forms, I also needed to study certain fundamentals, like how to draw fire, also how to draw scales. After having created this list, I went to Krita and I created group layers for each of these 5 topics which I identified that I needed to improve. I then went to Google and I got a bunch of reference images, and each day I would work on identifying basic forms of each of these reference images and coloring and shading it. So for example, these are the basic forms I identified. I would work on this one first, and then I would draw in rough lines and then finish lines, and I'd color it in as well. I'd do it one by one. 6 I thought would be enough to get a good idea of a dragon. So it took me about 2 days for each of these dragons. So in total this took me 12 days to study all these dragons. As you can see, I succeeded better in some than in others, but in each I got practice. Another thing I wanted to study was the head of each dragon. So I found 6 reference images of dragon heads, those which I liked. I put in the basic forms for each. I put in some rough lines for each, and I put in some finished lines. And then I colored it in. I was experimenting with it. So for example, this one doesn't have any finished lines. I wanted to see if it would look good without finished lines. Most important thing to see is my progress. And then I moved on to leg and claw, and I found 6 reference images for legs and claws. So here are the reference images. I drew in the forms. I drew in rough lines. I drew in finished lines, I colored it, and I was also playing around with some shading, and I was playing around with an overlay layer and some blending layer. Then it came time to study not just basic forms, but more fundamentals. So scales is something that's more related to texture. So in order to do that, I actually had to do some online research before I started learning to study scales. And when searching online, I actually found a very awesome teacher who I highly recommend, who is Alfonso Dunn, mostly on pen and ink. But what he teaches is also very much about drawing fundamentals that's useful for anybody, whether you're on digital art or not. And then finally, the last thing I wanted to learn was about how to draw fire. And I had to research this as well, because fire is another thing that you can't really use basic shapes and forms to draw fire because it's quite fluidy in nature. And so I had to go online to find some research about how to draw fire. And here you can see all my practice drawing fires. It kind of glitched out here a little bit, but whatever, you can see that I made some nice progress learning to draw fire. Another very good teacher, gamma trap. I followed these tutorials and it was extremely useful when it came to fire. So I put together everything I had learned about the basic shapes and forms of the body and the limbs of the dragon, as well as the head, and everything that I had learned about drawing fire and scales. It all came in super handy when drawing this. In fact, the only thing I didn't give special attention to in my study was wings. And as you can see, I think that the wings are what needs most work. But anyway, I think that it kind of illustrates my point. It's just a question of getting familiar with the basic forms and then adding in adding in texture and lighting. So that's it from me. Have a great time digital painting. See you next time. Bye bye.